I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
It is quite a chaotic situation, and that underlines the absolute need for a ceasefire as soon as possible.
Calls for more humanitarian resources for Gaza as a new plan that could end the fighting emerges. A new mission in Haiti. The Security Council approves a new force to combat gangs in the Caribbean nation.
Since the UN started to really focus on the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, 1.5 billion people around the world has been lifted out of poverty.
From fighting poverty to embracing AI, a conversation with the acting head of the UN Development Program. Next.
General debate for the 80th General Assembly is winding down. Over the last 2 weeks, representatives for every member state had an opportunity to address the world. Here's a portion of Chinese Premier Li Qiang's speech.
Fairness and justice are the most important values pursued by the international community. History keeps reminding us that when might dictates right, the world risks division and regression. Should the era of the law of the jungle return and the weak be left as prey to the strong, human society would face even more bloodshed and brutality. As members of the global family, we must uphold justice while pursuing our own interests. This is particularly true for the major countries. Only when all countries, big or small, are treated as equals and true multilateralism is practiced can the rights of all parties be better protected.
The conflict between Israel and Hamas and the resulting humanitarian crisis in Gaza has been a key issue during general debate. International pressure for a ceasefire is intensifying, but so is Israel's military campaign.
The situation in Gaza is morally, politically, and legally intolerable. Mass casualty incidents have mounted as operations in Gaza City expand. The collective punishment of Palestinian people can never be justified and must end immediately. The forced displacement of Palestinian population from any part of the occupied Palestinian territory is unacceptable and violates international law.
There is movement toward a possible peace plan in the nearly 2-year-old conflict. The U.S. announced Israel has agreed to a 20-point proposal. Hamas has yet to respond. Shudija has more on the Middle East and other stories of the week.
The general debate of the 80th session of the General Assembly finally wrapped up this Monday. Here is the official tally from the UN on world leaders who spoke.
This session, there was a total of 189 member states, with a breakdown of 83 heads of state, 7 vice presidents and crown princes, 41 heads of government, 4 deputy prime ministers, 45 ministers, 1 vice minister, and 8 chairs of delegation, as well as 3 observers. And in terms of the Secretary General's readouts, there have been 146 of them, and they have all been shared with you. So that's 1 more year down.
So many meetings in such a short span. No wonder some UN officials jokingly call these bilateral sessions speed dating. What does this President of the General Assembly, Ms. Baerbock, have to say about this week?
It was a strong call from all member states, or almost all member states, that we are indeed better together. And in these shaky times, this is already a strong commitment, because there were some out there questioning if this institution is still worth it.
It may be post-UNGA week, but that doesn't mean things have slowed down. For the Security Council, 2 major meetings are on the agenda, one on Palestine and another on Haiti. At the meeting on Palestine, the UN Deputy Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Mr. Ramiz Alakbarov, warned against the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Israeli settlement expansion continues accelerate alongside the proliferation of outposts and steps in the Israeli Knesset promoting the annexation of the West Bank. Israeli settlements have no legal validity and constitute a flagrant violation of international law and resolutions. They are systematically shrinking the territory of the Palestinian state and further entrenching Israel's unlawful occupation.
Israel's ambassador Denis Deneau, however, placed emphasis on Israel's right to carry out military operations in both Gaza and the West Bank.
We have no desire to be in Gaza. I have said it many times. We have no desire to go into Jenin and fight Hamas in the camps in Jenin. But it's your responsibility. Every nation, when you have terror activity, you deal with it, you confront it. But if you are not capable of doing it, then the responsibility will be on our shoulders.
And then the Palestinian ambassador Riyad Mansour raised the central question.
The whole world is saying we want to have two-state solution, which requires the end of occupation and the independence of the state of Palestine. Is the representative of the state of Israel ready to accept this global consensus or not?
Meanwhile, the Security Council this week adopted a resolution to expand an international force to combat gangs in Haiti. The plan, spearheaded by United States and Panama, would authorize up to 5,500 soldiers and officers, though not as a formal UN peacekeeping mission. Still, there are big unknowns. Who will provide the troops and who will foot the bill?
The success of steps proposed by this resolution would also depend on the envisaged voluntary contributions to the UN Trust Fund, which had hitherto fallen short of its mark. Regrettably, this aspect too remains unclear, with no definitive answers available as to the sources of these funds.
China, abstaining in the vote, argued that the draft left major questions unanswered, including funding, rules of engagement, and troop contributions.
2年前，个别国家信誓旦旦
2 years ago, a certain country pledged solemnly that in order to ensure the success of the MSS, it would provide sustained funding. Today, this same country has forgotten conveniently its commitment, refusing to fulfill its financial obligations, while demanding that the broader UN membership to do burden sharing for its proposed new force, all the while owing a huge amount of unpaid peacekeeping assessments. We cannot help but ask, how is it possible that one can demand burden sharing from others when it itself fails to fulfill its own obligations and shifts claims onto others at will?
And beginning in October, the presidency of the Security Council will rotate to Russia. And that raises a pressing question. How will the Council handle the issue of Ukraine under Russia's presidency?
We also noticed that in the program of work, there are no meetings concerning the Ukrainian issue. As the president of Security Council, how are you planning to solve this issue within this month?
Today at the presidential breakfast, a number of delegations, you guess which, raised the issue, saying that they might be asking for a meeting on Ukraine. We are fair presidency. If that request will come in due form, we will accommodate it, of course.
Well, and that's all from me for now. Back to you, Elaine.
Shudija, thanks. Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda. A high-level conference focused attention on the plight of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. More than 1 million Rohingya are living as refugees in Bangladesh, while others have been forced from their homes inside Myanmar. WHO immunization experts warn protection against preventable diseases could be in jeopardy. The panel pointed to an information and trust crisis. The panel is also pushing for development of more combination vaccines. Monday marked an international day to raise awareness of food loss and waste. Every day, tons of food go to waste. Households waste more than 1 billion meals worth of food every day, all while 1 in 11 people worldwide experience hunger.
Coming up.
For 80 years, the work is not done, but a lot has been achieved.
UN Insider.
There are just 5 years to go for the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. While progress has been slower than desired, there have been significant advances. The United Nations Development Program works in about 170 countries and territories to help meet the goals. I sat down with acting UNDP Administrator Haoliang Xu. We are only 5 years away until 2030, and the Sustainable Development Goals overall are not really on a good track. Only 35% of targets are on track, and developing countries are still suffering from slow economic growth and debt. How is the issue of financing, and how is that being addressed to help some of these countries accelerate and make quicker, faster progress to try to meet that goal?
The state of sustainable development is not ideal, right? You mentioned only 35% of the SDGs are either on track or having modest, progress, which in reality means that 1 in every 5 people is still living in poverty, right? And 2.5 billion people in the world, almost 1 in 3, right, do not have internet access, right? So the challenges are really serious, right? One of the reasons for this is the lack of financing for development. But this issue has to be looked at very carefully. Right? When we say that developing countries has about $4 trillion a year financing gap for sustainable development goals, developing countries in 2024 paid $1.17 trillion just for debt servicing, right? Just to pay the interest. Right? So when you have this kind of financing gap, you really have to look at the priorities, where you spend limited public resources. Right? How do you create the kind of fiscal space to invest in areas that are most effective, right, for maintaining and increasing your human resource capacity, right? That is linked to productivity, for example, right? How do you ensure you have a safety net, right, that provides security to population that are vulnerable, right? But how do you, carve out enough space to invest in health, education, infrastructure that creates conditions, for growth, right? So how do you work with the private sector to generate the financial return, but also, be supportive of your national development objectives? For example, to invest in green economic transitions, right? In renewable energy, right? In other areas that really are important for the country's economic future. Right? So there are a lot of issues that we need to look at. It's a really complex discussion.
China is an important development partner for many countries around the world, especially in trade and investment. It's also a key leader. You mentioned green technology a moment ago. How does UNDP see China's role in helping accelerate sustainable development?
China, has achieved a lot, right, in its own, development, effort. Again, over the last 45 years, right, since China opened up, the GDP per capita really has grown by 100 times. Right? That is phenomenal. Right? They've lifted, I think now more than 800 million people out of poverty. Right? And China is now the second largest economy in the world, and so forth. But China, of course, still has a lot of development challenges. Right? The Chinese government, recognizes that. They're using their 5-year planning instrument, right, to, address these remaining challenges. So I think, the government wants to focus more and more on, quality development, right, quality of life, issues. So I think UNDP can continue to play that role, right? To work with our governments, to be a second opinion provider, probably, because the government of China is very capable, right, in looking at their strategies. But I think we can, be a second opinion provider, right? Be a source of consultation, right? And bring international experience and practices, right, to help.
China is also one of the global leaders when it comes to artificial intelligence, and because this technology has been changing so rapidly, I'd like to get your thoughts on AI, if it can help bridge the digital divide, and how UNDP is working with it.
When I think of AI, generally I think about like two types of artificial intelligence applications. One is sort of big AI, right? You have large language modules, right? You create something that are fundamental, right, to this technology, right? That can really be the source of many other applications, right? But they also have what people call this small AI, right? Use these tools that the big AI provides, right, in specific applications to solve problems, right? For example, now it is quite a mature, application that you can use AI, imagery, right, to look at certain, diseases, in crops, right, and identify, this disease, and then apply associated treatment, for example, right? And there are also, apps that have been developed to monitor wildfires in the forests, for example, right? Combining images from the space, right, with the local sensors, right, with the drone imagery and the local on-the-ground sensors, for example. You have AI applications that can help treat diseases, in remote areas more effectively. I think for us, it is really probably, we see more opportunity for us to be engaged in this, the second part of this application, right? Using AI for good, right? To really, achieve, benefits for the, broader population, right? Using AI, as a technique. In this regard, it's really important that we work with our governments on building this so-called digital public infrastructure, right? The fundamental structures, data, right? Information safeguards, human rights safeguards, right? So that the AI can really be used safely, right, for the benefit of development.
China has started to play a more active role in the United Nations system over the past few decades. Overall, how do you view China's contributions when it comes to peacekeeping, development, and global governance within the UN's framework?
China, as I mentioned, right, they have really achieved a lot in their own domestic development. But China has also been and consistently been a supporter of South-South cooperation, right? Because the China-South-South cooperation started decades ago, right? But now has moved to a higher level. A few days ago, in the UN, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of China's Peace and Development Fund. I think more than 100 countries, have benefited from the funding support, from this facility, right? And China, I think 7 years ago, established the China International Development Cooperation Agency, CITCA, right? And through that, program and the South-South, fund, again, large number of developing countries, have received support that they otherwise would not receive, right? UNDP has collaborated with the Chinese government, including CITCA, and to support many developing countries. Last year, we agreed on a package of support to help 10 developing countries to, establish this early warning system, right, to deal with weather-related climate change, early warning, and so forth. So I think this, support has become more and more important. In this, 80th General Assembly, right, we expect that the Chinese government, right, will announce a joint collaboration with UNDP to establish a global center for sustainable development in Shanghai, using China's ecosystem and the capacity, right? And using UNDP's, global platform to support the developing countries to speed up, their, green, economic transition. Right? So I think, we look forward to this kind of collaboration more, in the future. Yeah.
Acting Administrator Haoliang Xu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, for this opportunity. Thank you.
UN Insider.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
Indigenous people around the world face a number of challenges. They often struggle to maintain their languages and way of life in a rapidly evolving world. One community is staying connected with the help of a podcast that spreads the word about people and the land they are connected to.
The Guarani people are the largest indigenous group in Brazil. But ranchers and development projects have pushed them out of their native lands.
A gente é muito machucado.
We are very hurt inside because we are the real Brazilians and we are left behind.
Para que ajude mais
There's no policy to truly help indigenous peoples. The indigenous peoples are forgotten.
Verdade, né? Aí a realidade, né?
Truthfully, in reality, we are always struggling for our survival.
Para nossa sobrevivência, né?
Dentro da comunidade, por ser uma comunidade pequena, a única forma...
Inside this community, because it's a small one, the only way to stay united and helping each other is by preserving the forests.
Bastante que é a mata, né? Só nas Tequá que tem ainda mata preservada.
Only inside Tecoa there are preserved forests.
Só mais.
Outside the Tecoa, there's only deforestation, so we don't see the same care with nature.
Cuidado, esse zelo com a natureza, né, com a mata.
The effects of deforestation are everywhere.
Quando sai da Tequá,
when you go outside the Tecoa, it's an empty environment, as if everything disappeared.
Pevate quareta a egui, oi onimanhã a kaguri.
Since indigenous territories are those that best preserve nature, and the lack of demarcation of indigenous lands means that less nature is protected.
Kaguri.
As a result, some regions suffer from intense drought, which makes them more susceptible to fires, which are often carried out in a criminal manner.
Aqui vocês puderam acompanhar pouco dos boletins informativos.
Now you are able to follow the reports we have been doing in partnership with the G20.
Também aconteceu através do
This partnership also happened through Itaipu, who made this connection so we would work with the G20. This recording was to talk about the climate crisis, a report made specifically to the G20. We send both audio and video recordings to them. This report is on the G20 website, so we get links to spread on social media and WhatsApp.
Nas redes sociais também.
It's important for me to work on and preserve our language and also delivering news to our relatives about what's happening and what can be done to make the situation better, and in a way, seeking for help.
Sobre o que tem acontecido e o que a gente pode estar fazendo para estar melhorando isso também e buscando, de certa forma, ajuda, né? Aqui no meu território a gente tem
Here in my territory, we have a hard time preserving the language because it is very close to the city. The children studying in this city also end up making it somewhat difficult to preserve our culture and language. But we fight. Now we have, through this work with communication inside the territory, better ways to work with our language.
When we decided to have Waraiju, we made clear that he wouldn't have a name in Portuguese from Europeans, that he would have a name in Guarani, Nandiwa, Kangang, and the Nandiwa last name, Waraiju Ga Vi Nandiwa. It's my baby's name. We always say that we want him to learn both languages and learn to value his culture. We think he likes it.
Here with me is my baby. He's 9 months old. I want to teach him how to fight for the rights of our people, to make our territory stronger, not only where we live, but also to the others. Strengthening our culture and language.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, inside the UN stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.